welcome to the Route Consultant Weekly Webinar. For those of you who haven't seen me before, my name is Matt West. I'm the Vice President of Sales here at Route Consultant. I oversee our brokerage team and work directly with buyers and sellers across the country. I've spent over 25 years in sales, started with the company as a broker, regional sales director, and now my current role is Vice President of Sales. For our regular attendees, welcome back. Whether you're brand new to the industry or you've been a contractor since the RPS days, we want this webinar to be a place where you can continue to learn and help get all of your questions answered. Before we get started, there's a quick disclaimer I need to read. Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation. All this means is that we do not speak on behalf of FedEx Ground or Amazon, and will not hear any material non-public information here today. We do, however, hope you hear some helpful information and learn something about the package delivery industry. For those of you here live, we will have time to answer questions at the end of the webinar. At the bottom of your screen, you also see a Q&A button. You can submit questions here, either on today's topic or any other question you may have about the FedEx Ground industry. Please do not use the chat feature. If you put your questions in chat, your question will not get answered. Feel free to start loading in the questions into the Q&A feature at any point during the webinar, and we'll address them at the end of our discussion. We'll do our best to answer everyone's question as long as time permits. So for today's topic, we're going to be discussing efficient truck life cycles and what your options are for turning over your fleet. How you manage your fleet is critically important to your whole operation, all the way down to your bottom line. So we want to make sure you're aware of your options and get an idea of what might be best for you and your business. To aid us in this discussion, we have long-term FedEx contractors and resident P&E experts, Dave and Amy Byers, on the webinar this week to share their insight and experience about buying, leasing, and flipping trucks. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave and Amy Byers.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Byers, COO of Slicker Trucking. We have P&D, line haul, and custom critical, and have been in business for about 18 years.
Hi, I'm Dave Byers. I'm the president, CEO of Slicker Trucking, contracts with FedEx, and started one man, one van 18 years ago.
Sam, you want to go over a little bit about what we're going to discuss today as far as trucks?
So today, I think we're going to go over, I think the topic that everybody was kind of hot on a couple weeks ago, and the questions were about fleet strategy and how that kind of evolves, how it's different for different size entities, and the different options, and kind of how things have evolved for us. I don't think there's kind of a one pill prescription for how this all works, but we're happy to share kind of our journey from one man, one van, and kind of how we look at things today. Dave kind of handles the truck side, the operation side, where I'm more on, kind of the overall operation side with finance, and I take in kind of employee satisfaction and kind of all those things that you don't really look at when you're talking about a fleet replacement plan or a fleet management plan, but all those things kind of tie together. So I think, Dave, when we talk about aging vehicles and things like that, there used to be kind of a base kind of guideline, like the three main pillars, if you will, of things that we, normally talk about in the trucking industry. And those are pretty much your base things. Why don't you cover what those things, are from? I think everybody kind of considers mileage, things like that, but there's a little bit more to it.
Sure. So, but when we look at when it's time to replace a truck, they have to hit a radar. So they hit a radar and we say like, hey, we need to start looking at this truck, and it's starting to maybe cost us more money. So the first thing we look at is the maintenance aspect of it. Is it costing us a ton of money in maintenance repairs month to month? Where we might not have a payment on the truck, but at the end of the day, we're putting that money that could be a payment into maintenance. So it's breaking down on the road. You have tow bills, things like that. So we keep pretty detailed records of trucks. And when you talk about the maintenance side of it, it could be a truck with low miles. It could be 70, 80,000 miles, and you have a lot of issues with the maintenance side of things. And we'll get into that, kind of the COVID trucks and how that hit. And so we monitor that and just the money that goes out into the truck with the downtime and kind of everything that goes with it. And then we monitor the repairs. What kind of repairs are there? There are a lot of small issues, which are like wiring problems that, you know, might be a cheap fix, but costly because of the time it takes to diagnose a wiring issue in a truck and kind of what that looks like. Or is it something that just goes bad and brake boosters, things like that just continue to fail on the trucks. So we balance that stuff, and we balance all the downtime. And then another category we like to look at is the fuel efficiency. Is the truck, you know, has the fuel efficiency really dropped off from where it used to be? Emissions and just overall productivity of the truck and the engine and the drivetrain. Are we spending more out on that than we expect to, you know, from something that's newer? And then we also take into account resale value. We want to get rid of the truck before it hits $0 of resale value. We don't want the truck to go to the scrapyard. We want to be able to sell it while it still has a value, and we can make a couple bucks and put that money down on the new truck when we buy that. So we really spend a lot of time talking about this kind of stuff that goes into the fleet, and it's Amy and I and our management team, and we you know, that's kind of the three main.
Yeah. So the other things are the layers that I think I've brought, and our management team, we discuss even at a deeper level than kind of those three pillars that are pretty typical in the industry. As Dave mentioned, miles, maintenance, resale value, fuel efficiency, fuel economy, things like that. We also look at things in our fleet, like utilization. Is it running 6-7 days? Is it only running 3 days? Is it sitting? Is it a spare? Do you run it often, or did your team, you know, you're kind of not looking, and that truck is sat for, you know, 2 months, no one's even driven it. And then compliance. So, you know, in line haul, is it FCAM, or is it 360? Is it, you know, all the different features that we're required to have on the trucks? Is there an older truck that kind of needs to be, you know, upgraded and then replaced with a truck with better technology, or even comfort? Which kind of leaves me into the next one, which is driver satisfaction. So, you know, are you running a big old piece of dump and your folks are like, nobody wants to drive it? You know, where we've realized that, you know, a happy driver is a safe driver. You know, and sometimes that older truck that maybe has that, you know, that old diesel smell, and it's just the emissions aren't great, and, you know, or it's breaking down all the time. Outside of the downtime from a repair or the maintenance, it really is just a morale killer. So we layer that in even to our fleet strategy. And then not just, I know Dave talked about fair market value or resale value, but we layer in, is it paid off or is it owned? So if there's an opportunity, especially today with the values of used trucks much higher than they've been in years, you know, I do a spreadsheet and I get all of our payoffs. I kind of take a look at, you know, what's under 10 grand as far as payoff. And then we kind of work our way back. Is the truck still good, or are those some of the trucks that we might want to move out and move some new trucks in? And then the last one that I really focus on with our overall strategy of right truck, right route, right driver, is there a need or is there a function that we need a truck for, or that we have a truck that isn't meeting that expectation? So has bulk gotten really big, or is there a sweep or a pickup that you're splitting between trucks? So that small truck doesn't work anymore. And if it was a 1200 or a P1000, one person could do the sweep or that pickup. So need and function is another layer that we look at when we kind of sit down as a team to address what trucks. It's not just like, oh, this truck hit 70,000 miles, or this truck hit 100,000 miles, or this one's 3 years old and it's almost out of warranty. It's just not the days of just looking trucks, very, from like a linear standpoint is just not how we do things anymore. But it used to be, when we were, I think, one man, one van. I think that's, kind of how things used to be.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't imagine what all's changed over the last 18 years as far as fleet strategy, what you guys have had to deal with.
Oh,
I know
yeah.
you've had to adapt on a lot of different areas. What are the things that have shifted in the industry over the past few years that's affected your truck strategy in particular?
So I think that the first thing is when you're one man, one van, which I know nobody in our industry is anymore due to minimums, but it's really about need, right? And affordability. Dave started.
We had to take what we could get. So we had to buy the trucks that were available. And if you needed it quick, it had to be a quick purchase. So it was kind of what you could get, what you could afford. And who would finance you? I was young at the time, and we had to go through just whoever would finance a giant truck for us and get us rolling.
And that was actually before FedEx, like the FedEx model, right? Where now vendors and finance companies understand what we do and how we get paid. And it's a very trusted model today, but 18 years ago, they were like, wait a second, you don't own the area, but you want us to finance money on a truck that you don't own the area. So it was just very new to everybody about kind of this model. You didn't own the business. They could take it, you screw up, they could take it from you at any minute. And I think that, finance companies are obviously now more aware of how the settlements work and, that it's a reliable business.
We had no strategy for truck replacement back then. You just bought it and you just would run it and run it and run it and run it. And if you needed another one, you would just find a cargo van or whatever that looked like for sale, and you would buy it and decal it and put it on the road and run it.
Yeah, run it till the wheels fall off.
The business has evolved.
Yeah, I think for me, I think some of the things that have changed specifically, even just in one contract. So not that we're 4 P&D contracts deep with hundreds of trucks on the road, but the ability to shift trucks to different terminals definitely helps us, because if we have a need, maybe our more metropolitan areas, we put some of our newer trucks because they don't see the gravel roads and things. So we can kind of hand me down, if you will, some of our trucks from one terminal to another, or shift more appropriate size trucks throughout our different terminals and our different geographies. We can find other uses for our trucks. So some of you heard us talk at the Route Consultant about diversification. We've turned some of our trucks into mobile food trucks. We've turned some of our ProMasters and Nissans into our mobile mechanic trucks. So there's those things that we've been able to do, kind of shift our strategies, I guess, since then. We're more financially able to buy a truck today than we were when, Dave was 23 and completely unproven as a business owner. So it's nice to be able today to have that as part of our strategy, is that we can go buy a new truck if we need to. It's not like, oh, what do? We have to move this truck and move a lot of pieces. So financial viability has played a huge part in our success and how we kind of, move through our trucks. And then relying heavily on our accounting firm. Trucks is our, it's our big asset, right? It's what we as contractors really kind of hold as far as value. So our accountant is constantly in contact with us about moving trucks from one area to another, different lines of business, whether we should finance or pay cash, and all those things, and to have that balance, right? That it's not just when we were younger, we kind of, and we figured out that we could afford to pay cash for trucks. Our accountant came to us once upon a time and said, no, you can't buy them all cash, and you can't finance them all. So we're at about I'd say a 60-40 right now, just because we're coming into peak. And we usually land at about 50% financed and 50% owned. And it keeps us in a really nice kind of cyclical financial comfort zone with that. And then other things I think that Dave can touch on as far as things that have shifted in the industry that have affected our fleet strategy. And I know we'll get into kind of our specific strategies as we go on here. But the things in the industry that have really hit us hard are some things like the COVID trucks and some other things.
Yeah, the COVID era was tough, tough on everybody. So our COVID trucks, we couldn't find trucks. When you could find trucks, the quality of the trucks that we were getting weren't there. So
which we're still dealing with.
Yeah, we still have that kind of fallout from COVID. And we would have trucks down waiting on parts that weren't available to fix these trucks that were brand new that we just had purchased, and just kind of snowballed into a tough time for us at that. And then on top of that, we had
now we have price.
The price,
Yeah.
The pricing's really shot up on the trucks. Some dealers aren't making step vans anymore, so we're stuck to one brand of step van just recently.
I think just this year, the price of vans was like, I think $10,000 or $12,000 more than just in years prior. And we couldn't find them. I had a shopping list of the trucks that we wanted, and we really had to kind of scour all the vendors that were at Route Consultant and some of these other expos. We had to kind of scour all these vendors to see if we could put together kind of this full shopping list.
Yeah, and which affects the shop, because we have a fleet that's all the same, so we inventory all the parts to work on these trucks, and now we have to make a shift. We have to start to inventory more parts because we had to get a different brand of truck this time around. So
Yep.
now we're managing to a whole nother inventory of parts to make our fleet stay on the road and stay smooth. So with after you hitting on price as well, we ran into the financing thing where these guys that had these trucks were kind of holding on to them pretty tight. I don't want to say hoarding, but kind of hoarding their trucks, and they wouldn't release them to us. You had to finance through them to get the trucks. They would only finance them. We couldn't pay cash for them. We had to finance. We had to finance through that vendor, and so we had to work on that and work behind the scenes and,
so you have to really find good vendors that you can trust,
which
right?
we did. We made some new business relationships. We found some really good people, and we got it done. We got some new trucks, and then availability. I hit on that was something that was kind of a big deal. They just weren't there. We couldn't touch certain kinds of trucks that we were looking for. We couldn't. They weren't available. They don't have them. They were trying to sell us used stuff. We didn't want used. So
and the ICs required that we had those bigger trucks.
And we needed size.
Everybody. I think if I say IC, the whole, anybody watching is just going to be like, oh, I got you. So the bigger the boxes, the bigger the cargo that you need, and those bigger trucks are a little bit harder to find.
Yeah, and then we also touch on bulk. Like we want to buy in bulk. We want to buy things in bulk. We want to get the group discounts on brake pads and oil in bulk and transmission fluid in bulk, and anything we can get in bulk, we want to be able to do. So if that truck takes a special kind of oil, we want to have enough trucks where we can get bulk orders to help the savings side of things instead of paying top dollar for oil changes and things like that. But we're buying oil filters, everything in bulk, anything we can, light bulbs, everything. And then we also plan in our truck strategy for growth and opportunity. We don't know what's coming in the future, but we always are hoping for some growth and some opportunity, whether it's something opens up, whether it's a little bit of contingency here or there, or just to help out a neighbor that gets in trouble, loses a couple of drivers and needs a hand, and we jump in and give him a hand, and just until he gets back up on his feet. So it's good to have the equipment available to do that. And then Amy hit on it, the trucks, based on truck size, we have to get trucks that the drivers can handle. One, they can handle the load that's put into the truck, and two, they can drive the truck, and that the truck's not oversized for what they can handle,
Yeah.
and that they'll be able to drive it safely.
Not all drivers are made the same,
Yeah.
right?
But we have a spot for every kind of driver that they're,
Yeah.
you know, that comes across, and we can kind of fit those needs, but we don't want to put somebody in a 1200 that's not ready to be in a 1200. So when we buy trucks, we have to think of that, because we can't have too many large trucks and we don't have drivers for those large trucks.
Yep.
So, and same with small trucks. We have small trucks and there's drivers that can do way more work than a small truck can handle.
And we understand that there are contracts out there that are all big truck contracts. Like, we get it. There's, you know, we have plenty of contracts in our terminals that are, you know, 10 or 12 route contracts, and they're all P1000s. But for our mix in almost every single terminal, we are a hybrid. In every terminal, actually, we have P1000s and small trucks. We have a ton of rural. So it is kind of this hybrid. So finding the right trucks for those people, but we do have those growing pains as well, where, you know, it used to be a 700 and now it's a 1000, or now, you know, we picked up a new industrial, or we picked up a new shipper, and now it's, you know, Target, and they just built a new Target. So now it's 2 Targets 3 times a day. So we have all the same, you know, struggles when we're looking at what kind of truck, and what truck size and the appropriate person to put in those trucks.
And then lastly, we talk about resale value. What truck holds their value the best? Which one can you sell in
Easier,
whether it's 3 years or 5 years down the road? Which one do we think it's going to sell and get us the most return on our truck? And I won't throw any brands under the bus, but we've worked a long time, so we kind of got to figure it out, so we know what to buy, knowing down the road it's going to go away.
Yeah. And the value, like now, the resale value of those trucks are higher than I've ever seen them. So, you know, again, that strategy, we do a couple things as we talk about kind of what our rental strategy and fleet strategy actually is today. But we do take into account kind of what those payoffs are, and, you know, what the value of kind of getting rid of a truck now versus waiting. And kind of playing that game with, you know, do you wait till it's paid off? Do you wait until, you know, it's paid down? Obviously you don't want to be upside down in anything. That's not a strategy at all. But there is a for every single person, you know, and those strategies can be different. You know, if it's in a rural area and it's going to get completely beat to hell, you know, you might want to get rid of it sooner. If you can repurpose it and put it in an area that's maybe lower miles, or maybe it's a manager truck, those are also strategies. So it's not a one size fits all. But those are just some other things that, you know, like Dave said, the COVID trucks, fighting with those, you know, what were they, water pumps in the beginning, and batteries and oil pumps and all these different things, when they weren't put together right. Those trucks are still kind of new and out there. I mean, we're buying, you know, 2021, 2022 trucks now, new, and we're still kind of having to rehab those trucks once they come in. A little bit cheaper, but you're going to put the work into them. If you want to buy a 2024 that doesn't have those problems, you're going to pay a little bit more.
Yeah, we used to call those Friday trucks. You know, those are the ones that were assembled Friday afternoon before everybody got, you know, ready for the weekend to get off. Those, generally speaking, were the ones that, you know, you may have a problem with. So I heard you mention a couple of things earlier. One was peak and the other word was rental. So, you know, peaks here, we talk about renting and leasing. You guys have an interesting fleet strategy that really focuses on peak needs and beyond. Tell us how you've evolved from just peak trucks to a full fleet strategy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what it used to be. It used to be the terminal would grab 50, 60 rentals, and there would just be enterprise rentals everywhere outside. And if you had a driver and you had
they had the drivers too.
and you had a driver that you could put in that seat, you could go to the terminal and say, hey, I want to rent a van for a day or for the whole peak season. And they would say, here's the set of keys. Here you go. You're good. And that's how we used to do it. So if I wanted to hire 5 drivers, I could put 5 drivers on. I could take 5 of the rental vans, and they would bill it out to us and do that. And then it changed, and it went to week. So it was like a short-term lease
directly with enterprise,
and we went directly to enterprise, and it was week to week. And you would say like, hey, I need this van for 6 weeks, and they'd say okay, and they would deliver them to the terminal for us still. And we would just run them, and you would have them, and it was kind of nice to to do. And then,
And that was, we could pick them up literally the week before peak, like November 15th.
yeah, you could pick them up the day before Thanksgiving if you wanted to. And that's what we would try to do, pick them up as late as possible and return them as soon as possible.
Yep.
So we would try to get them in and get them out as fast as possible. And then that kind of changed, and they kind of started setting some timelines. Some competition came in, and they said, well, we'll rent them for months at a time. So they kind of tightened the screws down on us, and they said, we're going to do long-term rentals. Yeah, you need to commit to us for 3 months that you're going to have these vans.
Yep.
So that's what we would do. We would rent these vans. They would sit in the yard for a month, maybe a month and a half,
Yeah.
before we even put them to work, just to have them hold, so we would know, and we would have to track them down. So we would drive 3-4 hours to pick these vans up,
Mhm.
and just kind of get them and hang on to them, so that we had them when the time came to need them.
Yeah. So that's when I think contingency really started to ramp up. And it was kind of available everywhere. We jumped on that train. It was getting super popular. The weekly rates, as Dave said, went into monthly rates. They were starting to require that we, put in our orders in October. I think this year it was even September. And they were month to month. I know some rentals this year are like mandating 3 months, some are mandating 6 months. And that was just, and then at the end of the year, you're turning it in February, and they're like, who took this thing to the golfing range and literally just hit golf balls at it all afternoon? Like the sides of them were just ping ponged everywhere and damage, and they would go around like any other rental company and market, and then you get this giant bill. I think one truck one year we had like $16,000 worth of damage, and I was just like, that's it, we're done. like I just bought that truck twice. I rented it for 3 months, and now and now I got to pay 16 grand to give it back to you. Thanks so much. And that was probably the end of our renting. By the time I calculated, I think that year we rented 20 trucks across all of our different terminals, plus the contingency drivers. So it was 20 trucks plus, the length of time of having them, plus the return fees. And when we were smaller, it made sense. Running 20 trucks today does not make sense. Especially, now that we're looking at, turning over trucks. Again, we're in this more than just 1 year now. So we have kind of this cyclical, life cycle with our trucks. So then we moved, Dave, when I put the brakes on renting, and it was becoming time.
Well, the renting was going good, but it was the after rental fees that weren't so hot.
Correct.
So Amy and I brainstormed, and we came up with an idea that maybe we would buy inexpensive vans that were in good shape, maybe higher miles, but we could use them for peak. So if you're gonna spend thousands of dollars for rentals, why not just budget that into the fleet to be able to just buy vans. So we were buying vans. We would buy from the cable company that they were getting rid of some vans. We bought a bunch of trucks from a fleet that came out of the cable company. We bought some from a Expediter they were all high mile, but great condition because they just drove a ton of miles cross country.
Yep.
We bought a bunch of those, and they were relatively inexpensive, and we decaled them up, put them to work, and we used those for peak season. And then when we came out of peak, we sold some and you could get the return back on the investment.
We even had some that were from local like cleaning and restoration companies that were like bright yellow or fluorescent green. And we took them down the street to a local, like a professional wrap place, and just had them wrap them white. And they would just wrap them, and then we decaled on top of it. But for the price of the inexpensive truck, I hate to say that we refer to them now as throwaways, but they weren't. They were valuable, and then we could resell them after peak for between $2,500 and $7,000. So it was an effective, affordable way for us to get through peak without renting. And it allowed us to kind of manage our cash flow and manage the assets. And that was kind of that was kind of up until a couple years ago, that was kind of our go-to strategy to get away from renting. And then we really folded it in to our actual fleet replacement strategy, right? Like our actual fleet plan is based on peak. So as we went from the rentals, you're spending all this money, 20 rentals, you got all these return fees. What do we have to show for it at the end of peak, right? And then we went into buying kind of these throwaway trucks, if you will, or these low value, low cost, decent value trucks as that. And then at the end of the year, we were like, okay, well, we saved all this money on rentals. They weren't breaking down and now we can get rid of them. Came out a little bit ahead. But now some of our trucks needed to be replaced. And that rental, that kind of turnkey, those kind of small throwaway trucks, if you will, or temporary trucks, if you will, those didn't fix the fact that we needed to replace a couple P1000s, or we needed to, move some ProMasters out and get some box trucks in. So we're still left with this kind of empty strategy of, okay, we figured out how to get away from renting. And we figured out how to get a little bit money back on these trucks, but how do we fold in this bigger strategy of I need now it's March and I need trucks. And now we need a lot of trucks. And if if you're in line haul, you know what February brings, that brings plates. And what May brings, that brings E2290s. That's a road tax that we have to pay in line haul. So everything in the beginning of the year in spring, I always say February is the shortest month of the year, but it has the most expensive costs associated with springtime. So how do we get through the year then and have money and opportunity to buy trucks affordably and effectively?
But we also came out and when you buy, sell all these trucks at peak, you feel like first of the year, once you sell them, we just moved all these trucks. Why do we need more trucks? We just bought, sold, decaled, put on our schedules, taken off our schedule. So it kind of mess with you a little bit too, because you
lost track of really kind of the reality of what you needed if you didn't sit back down and have kind of these conversations.
Yeah, and we would meet before peak and talk about how many trucks we needed, and then we had to sit down again in February, March, and talk about truck needs again.
Yeah. So what we do today, and how this is kind of, again, we kind of went a long way around the barn to tell you the story of kind of where we've come from one guy, one truck to a couple terminals to now having 4 terminals, and some pretty large fleets. So now what we do is in about September, well, I do the numbers a little bit earlier, but I bring the numbers to the guys around September, August, September. And I tell them, here's a list of trucks that we can get rid of, as far as, safely either owned or have low payoff values. These are trucks. And then we give those to our managers and they figure out what trucks they want to get rid of, even if they don't have low. Like, what trucks do you not need in your fleet? Again, going back to that need and function, right? And the one guy says, hey, I have a 12-foot, but I need bigger. So I need like a 14-foot dually. And my other manager says, ooh, I'll take the 12-foot. So we're good. So it's kind of an even swap. But I do need to buy a 14-foot dually for this one guy so that he can give the 12-foot to someone else. So we kind of, move all the chess pieces around and we sit down and we make a list of all the trucks that we need. And then in January, February, I put a checklist on our whiteboard and I tell these guys they owe me trucks, because if anybody knows, like, it's very easy to absorb a truck because one went in for maintenance and then you just start running the other one and then you end up not getting rid of it. So I hold these guys accountable to getting rid of these trucks that we talked about, also to give us a little bit of cash flow after peak. But so in September, we make this list, this kind of the shopping list that I talked about earlier. And then we reach out to all of our truck vendors, find the rates and the truck values and the price points and the availability, delivery, or are we going to go get them, whatever all that looks like. We make that plan in September and then we start executing. And then about mid to late October, we just got the trucks in about a week ago. We bought 14. We bought a 1200, 3 P1000s, 3 700s, and 7 14-foot cutaways. So it was 14 trucks. They all came in. They're getting decaled right now. I think we're the last of the few of them. They all have the cameras in them. Everything's ready to go. They're ready to get approved and put on Schedule B. And, numbers, everything's generated. And then so now these trucks, which we're purchasing, and some of them we have contact payments on, some of them we have, 90 days same, all these different things that the finance folks have offered us, we can make it through peak with these trucks, and the payments are actually payments. So they're going towards the value. It's not just running and not having anything at the end. So now that money that we used to allocate for rentals, which is your ramp up money, and your peak money, is going towards paying for trucks that I need anyway. So the strategy has kind of led to that. And then like I said, January, February, we're able to offload some of these or repurpose if we need to, but we have that option to either offload or repurpose those 14 trucks that are replacing, these new trucks that are replacing those old trucks. So then we come out ahead then in January, February with a little bit more cash flow even than peak allowed, because we're able to offboard those trucks and give us a little bit more cash flow going into the spring. So it's really worked out to be a successful strategy for us. When we talk about like certain mileage and certain, maintenance, we have some trucks that have some really high miles and they have just been really, steady Betties, if you will. And we're not going to get rid of those trucks. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But there is a time, that everybody has to establish, whether it's a rural area or whether it's a short run or whether you use it as a spare bulk truck or a manager truck. Make sure that you do it intentionally. So I think that's just what we learned about what we do, is to not just, kind of willy-nilly do something, but to look through all of those checklists, not just miles, oh, well, it's at 100,000, out it goes. But to look at all those different things as far as utilization and need, function, all the, driver satisfaction, all those things that are kind of outside of what we normally talk about when we talk about truck fleet strategies.
Absolutely. I think it's awesome you guys communicate with your team and really get input from their part to utilize your fleet strategy. So that's awesome. With line haul and P&D, there are many options for rental, short-term leases with or without service agreements, as well as fleet service agreements. I know you have your own shops now, but were any of these options ever a consideration for you prior to that?
We haven't used short-term leases.
With or without maintenance.
Yeah, with or without maintenance. I'm pretty hands-on. I'll say that I'm pretty well-rounded with trucks and maintenance and working on them, and enough to get by and enough to do. And then what I couldn't do, I built good relationships with our maintenance shops that we used to use, and I had great dealership. We had great relationships with those guys, whether it was service or parts or even buying from them directly if we needed something quick, and they had it in stock, we could just get it from them. So we had those, and then
used to source. So Dave used to source our parts too. So part of that kind of reducing downtime and having to wait, he would go on the internet, and it was on eBay, right? It was super popular. And he would find the parts or go online to all these different parts places and find the parts and bring them to our maintenance shops that he built these relationships with. So they knew they weren't going to gouge us on parts, but they knew that they were going to get the consistent business by building that relationship. So they would get it on labor and things like that. So I know those shops are sometimes hard to find because that's where dealerships and car places make their money, is on parts. But when we were strapped, that's, that was kind of.
But they would call too, and they would say, there were a lot of like buy 3 tires, get 1 free. And they would call and say, hey, Dave, we remember the last 3 trucks you had in. We're going to need tires pretty soon. Do you want to do the buy 3, get 1 free? And we'll hold them for you until you bring them in.
Yeah.
And I'd say, yeah, I'll buy 12 tires.
So,
and so really I would buy 9 tires and get 4 for free. So technically it would be 1 truck gets tires for free.
Yeah.
Which
So
it's huge.
So the problem with the maintenance and lease agreements where we found is that we couldn't find those maintenance shops, right? And they wouldn't do the PMs and allow us to bring in our own parts and things like that. Or we couldn't even find a shop. When we first got into line haul, we really thought that was going to be, kind of necessary, right? To have that maintenance. We didn't have a maintenance shop at the time. We only had one driver, and Dave was managing P&D. So how do we do all this? Maybe a lease with an all-in service agreement is the place to go. And between the cost and then not having shops and not guaranteed turnaround times, even when they would give us the rentals, it was just so much that it was just easier to kind of do it the way that we were doing it on the P&D side. Maybe comfort had a little bit to do with that. And then all of our trucks are regional, right? And local. So we're 2.5 hours away from the furthest location that we service, even with our custom critical. So it's really never been, an option to do that for us. I know that they're super valuable though. Those programs are valuable. And I know that a lot of people lean solely on those kinds of programs and do very well, and are very successful. I also think that it's a great option if you're a hands-off AO. So if you're not there every day and you're not kind of managing your managers, or you don't have a maintenance person, to stay on top of those things, I think it's a fantastic plan. It's just never been the right fit for us. I see we have some
Anything else?
questions. I think we have questions.
Yeah, we do. Before we get into Q&A, I want to go through some of the new listings and events we've got coming up, and then we can hop into the question portion.
Sure thing.
So new listings we've got coming on. We've got a Central Florida listing, 4 P&D routes, 22, almost 23% EBITDA. Really nice company. Also in southwestern Ohio, we have a really nice 20 P&D route business at 1.5 million, roughly about 18.5% EBITDA. 22 employees, 1 manager, really nice listing there. We have one in Western Missouri, 15 P&D routes for 1.83 million. Roughly about 29% EBITDA, which is a phenomenal margin. And then we've also got one in Central Connecticut. It's 8 P&D routes at 1.1 million, right at 24% EBITDA, 8 employees, 1 manager. So really nice business there. Also, we have an event coming up. A link for all of our events will be posted in the chat if you're interested in signing up for any future events. I do want to highlight one in particular, though. November 15th, we have our in-person new investor workshop right here in Nashville, Tennessee. This exclusive event is going to be available to anyone who enrolls in our new Investor Summit e-course. This workshop allows you to meet our team in person, learn more about the industry and the opportunities available to you. Check out the link in the chat to learn more about the specific event and sign up for our new Investor Summit e-course. We do have some significant year-end discounts right now for the educational opportunities that we offer that you'll definitely want to take advantage of if you haven't already. And with that being said, we will jump in and answer some questions. I think first up is from Eric. Says,
Yes.
What banks do you see to finance your operation?
So we actually have, oh my gosh, we used to just do a couple. And obviously with the way economics swing, we do look around. As Dave mentioned, with those with the bigger trucks, they have to, a lot of them require that you buy the trucks and get them financed. So it's not just the finance companies that you use, it's the price of the truck and what negotiations they've gone through to get better truck pricing. But we in the past have used merchants, AP Finance. We've also used TransUS. We also have a local company that is near and dear to our heart. When you can get the bill of sale or purchasing trucks outright from another contractor or non finance company. They're here in Ohio. They're called Shaker Auto Leasing, and it's basically like a purchase. It's a dollar buyout, same concept. But we've used those guys for years. We also have a credit line through our bank, through PNC Bank, that we can buy trucks and then kind of move those off into a loan finance situation. So those are just some of the companies. I know there's a ton of really great companies. I know, there's companies that we haven't used that are very reputable, that have been at the, Route Consultant Expos and some of the other expos. But I would do your due diligence. Even if you're not looking for trucks, find out, how quickly you can get them, get your credit scores in order, Find out what the terms are, what makes sense for you, whether it's, anywhere from 36 to, my gosh, 72 or more. I know a lot of the trucking companies or a lot of the finance companies are doing that now. Yep.
And Tim asked a question. It kind of piggybacks a little bit off the leasing you were talking about. And I know you guys don't lease a ton of your trucks, but what do you ever consider leasing, or when is leasing appropriate? What are your thoughts about leasing trucks, and when should contractors consider that?
Again, I think we've always gone back to, it's just not for us. And I do know that there's a lot of companies out there that do it. It's, a very turnkey program. So if you are, we have our own maintenance shop, so it doesn't make any sense for us now. But if you are more of an investor standpoint or a little bit hands-off or new to the industry, I think it's a really smart model. When you can't do things yourself, or you don't have maybe the industry knowledge yet, or maybe you do have the industry knowledge yet, you just don't want to mess around with it. I think it's a very turnkey, hands-off kind of approach, and it keeps you in newer trucks more often. So I think there's a lot of upside to it. It's just not been our model.
Absolutely. And I've got a couple questions. It's like from Daniel. One, he says, do you use any of your trucks until the end of their life cycle?
Oh, run it till the wheels fall off.
We have had some trucks that we run until they're done. We've transitioned away from that, and we do not run them to the end of their life cycle now. We run them until we see that they're costing us more money than it's worth to keep them. So we want to sell them while they still have a value, and then we'll take the money that we get from selling that truck and apply that money strictly to the new truck that we buy. So if you sell a truck for 10 to 15,000, you put that 10 to 15,000 down on your new truck, and it takes that right off the top.
Little bit disciplined, but it's become, it's hard when you're, when you're kind of struggling financially, not to take that money and allocate it elsewhere. But in the end of the day, rolling that positive equity, forward really does get you ahead. And then, some of the trucks, like we said, that are not to the end of the life cycle, some of those are now our mobile food trucks, or our maintenance trucks. And we do have some where, like I said, we rotate from the Cleveland area maybe down to a more rural area, because it's a little bit more rugged, and we don't want a brand new truck down there, to get beat up right out of the gate. So we take a little bit more of a gently used truck. So those trucks do get full life cycle. But again, like Dave said, we don't drive them until they die. We do drive them until we can get, a good value out of it. There's plenty of other, people that need trucks like ours that may not have the stop and go and the idle time that we have to deal with. Much more reliable for them than us.
Absolutely. Daniel also asked, have you found an effective tax strategy for your trucks, or do you have a tax strategist?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, definitely find a relationship with an accountant that's in the trucking industry, not just a base accountant. Our accounting firm has us with a very specific transportation and trucking industry professional. He's a partner in the firm, and he guides us kind of everything we need to know as far as keeping things on your balance sheet and what you can write off, and kind of all the things behind tax strategy. And there's a lot of different strategies in how you want to do that. And again, that's the recommendation of whether you buy them or lease them or rent them, or or purchase outright, whatever that looks like to you. But my recommendation would be to find a professional that has experience in the trucking industry, not just looking at truck value and write off or tax benefits for owning a truck. Like, really find somebody that's in the industry that knows trucking, that kind of knows everything that goes along with trucking, from the maintenance side to the truck ownership, financing, all balance sheet, everything. So just make sure you find the right accountant to do that for you.
Let's see, we've got another one that says, for a potential new contractor, how do they find a shop to appraise and check fleet trucks worthiness before purchase?
Oh, that's a good one. And
Yeah,
we
it's a great
did,
question.
yeah, it's a great question. You know, again, finding, not just finding somebody that can work on your stuff, but finding a person you can trust. Really, Dave spent the better part of the first 5, 6 years of our company, you know, really making those relationships, going to the local guy down the road and explaining, taking time, not just like, hey man, can you do this and how much does it cost, but going there and making a relationship, getting to know that person, getting to know how they work on trucks, what their timing looks like, you know, and making arrangements, whether they bring all of our stuff there. You know, if we took a lot of our repairs to one place, it was very easy then for Dave to say, hey man, I got this truck. Can you take a quick look at it and kind of do an up and down on it? Let me know if it's worth what I'm buying it for. And the guy would say like, yeah, it's good, but it's going to need this, this, and this. You could go back, negotiate a little bit. And then he would be on the end, he would be the one that would be repairing it. So he was more vested in what kind of truck you were buying. So, you know, really forge those relationships with representatives that are around you, and not just the dealership ones or the big guys, right? Like find a relationship with the local tire company, with the local exhaust company. The mom and pops seem to be the ones that really have your best interest because you're their lifeline. So they're giving you all they have. So those are kind of some of the relationships that we've forged over the years.
Absolutely. Lisa said, WAP work area planner analysis, height and size dimensions, and historical. Do you know why the settlement percentage is so far off of their own historical numbers?
The settlement, as far as large package percentage, is that the question? I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, just
So the settlement, so the settlement percentage is a look back. You guys love that word, I'm sure. So the way that the LP percentage is calculated is it's actually calculated from, so say like right now, what's on my settlement is actually what was the average for September. And then that rolls forward and then it fixes itself, right? And then, so say it's, I don't know, 10% in September, but you're really feeling 12 or 13% LPs, you're going to see that on the November settlement. And then it's not actual, right? If you notice that it's the same for the entire month, there's no way that you're actually getting the same percentage all 4 weeks or all 5 weeks of the month. So it's a look back and then a projection forward, and then that keeps going as they go. So that's why it might seem off. But you can do, you know, you can pull your own numbers. You can pull from the WAP, you can pull historicals and see what that looks like. But if you're calculating month to month, like why does October seem funny versus October? That could be one of the reasons, is that you're measuring to the wrong time period.
fantastic. We've got a couple more questions we can.
Yeah, I think we have
answer.
time for maybe like one more.
Okay. Quentin says line haul options, acquire via financing or lease.
Line haul.
We finance. If we're going to finance something through line haul, we don't lease.
We don't lease. So we don't go over the road. We're all local, and we have 5 terminals in our hub area. So we are an hour away from all 5 terminals. And so for us, and our shop is right in the middle. So we're a very unique, you know, kind of business model when it comes to whether we lease or finance trucks or buy them outright. We don't buy brand new trucks because the runs that we do, because they're so local, they're not real high mile routes. So to have a, you know, a $2,000 or $3,000 truck payment on a route that only runs, you know, 400 miles a day is just never going to cut it. So you have to figure out a strategy that works for your finances and the long-term, you know, value and protection of the maintenance and things like that. Now, if we were going from Cleveland to California and back, I would definitely change gears on what that looked like. We would probably buy new, we would go with a leasing company. We would deal with one of these larger leasing companies that have the maintenance and the replacement. But our trucks, like we have spare trucks that are at every terminal. And if somebody breaks down, they're, less than an hour away. We also have our own tow truck company that only does internal stuff. So we can go drag a healthy truck to those broke down, to the breakdown and get it turned around and bring the broken one home. So it's a totally different strategy, but there is value in those leasing programs. And I encourage you to, when you go to some of these expos, to reach out to some of these line haul contractors or go to some of these contractor forums on Facebook or elsewhere and ask those questions to over the road guys that may have a experience with leasing and, goods, bads, they can share that experience just like we're sharing ours.
Well, guys, thank you so much. This is going to
You're
conclude our
welcome. This one was
webinar.
fun.
Thank you so much to Amy and Dave Byers for joining us and sharing your insights and expertise on fleet. We know that one size doesn't fit all, but I know you guys have kind of been around, for a long time and have seen both ends of it as a new contractor and experienced contractor. So thank you so much for sharing your insights and answering questions for our guests.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.